You have the Black River Impoundment. It comes off the beach, off the ridge, drains in a westerly direction. There's about 80 feet of contour in about 2 to 3 miles. So, and it goes in a westerly direction and continues through a variation of culvert systems, through roadways, and into the Black River, which is also known JD 25-3. It's a legal drainage system, direct portion of the Black River. What this project is doing, the Black River Impoundment, is to divert 16 square miles of drainage area that goes directly to the Black River, detour it, divert it through 3 man-made channels along roadways to bring it into the impoundment. And with that, we had to incorporate improvements to a legal drainage system that also had to, we didn't go through an improvement proceeding. We went through a transfer hearing with Pennington County, who had jurisdiction of the legal drainage systems. We did a transfer of the system. At the same time, we established a project under 103D, which took over parts of the system but didn't abandon it. The county then had to abandon parts of the legal drainage system that continued to the Black River. So there was a whole host of hearings that had to occur just to get this project legally ready for construction. We also applied for flood hazard mitigation through the DNR flood hazard mitigation funding for 3 times and never got any funding. So the Red River Watershed Management Board and the Red Lake Watershed District decided to proceed with the project without state funding. We don't want the state to get comfortable with this, but we did feel that we had landowner cooperation. We had already purchased upwards of 700 acres of land for the project. Again, the Watershed District and the Red Board helped purchase that land in hopes that the state would come around with some bonding money, which didn't happen. But in the meantime, we also looked at other funding avenues through Clean Water Fund and strictly to do a lot of the clean water or the erosion control project portions of the project, which included rock structures to take the steep grade of the drainage systems as they go north and south and east and west, because we had to drop down some of the gradient elevations to assure that we didn't have in-channel erosion. At the same time, we put in sidewater inlet pipes at every area where water comes into the drainage system from the farm, from the fields. Also, establishing a grass strip consistent with 103E021, but we weren't doing a legal drainage project, so we really didn't have to comply with 103E. But since we were doing the legal drainage, or doing the project under 103E anyway, we decided to establish the grass strip as the same as what a legal drainage system would require. We also set up a water management district for this area. The project will be funded completely by non-local. When I mean we're not going to, most of the project will be funded through state, local dollars through the Red Board appropriation and Watershed District's Capital Project Fund. But future maintenance of all 3 laterals that are constructed as part of the system will be maintained by the Water Management District in the future. The Red Lake Watershed District will be maintaining the impoundment portion and the outlet structure. So this was all presented at the public hearings under 103D. If you guys aren't familiar with Minnesota ditch law and drainage law, we really work under 2 statutes, 103D drainage and 103E, which is really legal drainage systems. So there's just a lot of legal stuff that we have to do before we can get a project, and then that goes with permitting, which only took a couple of years. So with that, we're approaching a curve in the road here now where one of our first diversion channels will start. We will be taking water from north of this roadway, which already comes here naturally. We'll intercept it right at this curve, and we'll construct a new system along the east side of County Road 12. So the culvert intersection will be right up. You will just continue on, yep, around the curve.
Right here.
Right at this crossover pipe here, the new ditch will be constructed and go south. You'll be able to see some of the culverts already laid on the side. The contractor has already started stripping in various locations throughout the project. The impoundment was completed last fall. We let the bid in what, Tony?
October?
We let the bid October, and by December 31st, the contractor had the entire impoundment, which encompasses 700 acres, completed in 2 months. They did over $2.3 million worth of work in a month and a half. So they really gave her a heck, and so now this year all they have left to do is do some of the punch list items on the outlet structure, as well as the impoundment portion, and to start the diversion channels and doing all the crossover pipes through these roads. And there's three diversion channels. These are types of, this here project will transport water at a 10-year frequency, which is really common, and it's part of the strategic plan of the Red River Valley is to establish culvert sizings on a 10-year flow frequency. As we get up to this tower, not the one on the right, but the one farther down on the left, up ahead here, instead of dealing with the tower, which is another thing we thought of at one of our meetings, I said there's no way we want to get close to those anchors on that tower. We don't want that tipping over. That could be a huge liability for us. So we're diverting the water from the east side of County Road 12. We've already installed a new structure through County Road 12, probably about 600 feet from the tower, and then we'll run the water on the west side to an east-west legal drainage system that will also be improved as part of the project, and will be maintained as part of the system. Pennington County Ditch Authority at the hearing of the transfer hearing then transferred the entire system over to the watershed district for future maintenance, so that the legal drainage system and the impoundment were all maintained as one entity. It's also they abandoned. I take that back. They just redetermined benefits on JD 25-3 and took that benefited area out of the JD 25-3 system and put it into the water, and then we put it into the water management district, so they're not being double taxed. Because before they were paying taxes on JD 25-3, and we didn't want to also add a tax for the water management district, so we just had the county redetermine, or they didn't even completed the redetermination, but they did take out some properties under 103E. We're coming up where did they already surface this?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if we're gonna have a speed bump here or not, but I guess they already surfaced the crossover pipe, which is right up here where these orange signs are. You can see the contractor already stripping dirt, and we'll be taking a right here at this stop sign, which is County Road 3. And County Road 3 is where the legal drainage system runs. It's an east-west legal drainage system that is in place now, and it ultimately drains into the Black River. We have a crossover culvert that brings all the water into the impoundment, and then all of GD 25-3 downstream of that crossover pipe that we'll point out when we stop will be abandoned, or was abandoned, and it goes back to the road authority. So when they do any future road maintenance or reconstruction, they can really fill in that old ditch system, because the drainage area is only going to be probably a half a mile of drainage versus probably about 8 to 10 miles. That's why we really have a lot of those rock drop structures within the channel to stabilize and to make sure that there's no in-channel erosion on these ditch systems.
Here's one right here. That
We have one already.
Will be there.
No, we have one that's dug out. We just went past it. It drops the elevation about 3 feet, 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
Each drop structure will take out about 2 feet of grade.
I think there's 33 of them on the project.
Okay, there's 33 of those drop structures on the impound or on the project itself, spread throughout the 9 or 12 miles of drainage system. We have another one here. If you look to the right, you'll see how it drops down, and they'll be putting rock in that spot. We'll take the left at the next, right past that payloader, okay? And then we can just, when we get off the gravel road, we'll just stop for just a second. We won't be getting out, we'll just stop. That's down.
Yes, right. And then they made the water management because it's all game funded by project. Right. So it's really the main long-term maintenance is where they wanted to get dollars.
We'll turn left right here where the payloader's turning, and then we'll just
And we needed to do it.
we'll just look over to your right shoulder when we stop, and you'll see where the structure is going through the road, which will eventually be tied into the inlet ditch, which you're seeing. It'll be on the other side of the impoundment, but you can see the structure that's under the highway. We just put that one in. We'll be digging a ditch, which will tie into the inlet ditch that's on the other side of the impoundment. You can kind of see it. It's where all the new veg is, and then we'll just continue on now.
That's a 14 by 7 box.
Yeah, it's a 14 by 7 box, and the legal drainage system that I talked about them abandoning will be from that structure to the Black River, to the west of us, about a mile. So the watershed district purchased all the land on this project, with the exception of Matt Sorbig's dad's property. Matt's sitting in the back of the bus, works for the Pennington SWCD. If you know the Sorbig clan, they like to hunt. And his uncles and his dad know what impoundments do for habitat once they're constructed. And they did not really want to give up any of their hunting land, or farmland in this case, but hunting land in the future. So they chose to keep their land and just give us a flowage easement, and they'll farm what they can. And what they can't farm, they'll just leave it and put it in the habitat and leave it for hunting and waterfowl, because as you see when we get to the outlet structures, there's some gigantic borrow pits that will store water for migratory waterfowl. So they're going to have their own little hunter's haven, and they got paid to create it. So it's a kind of a win-win. This is just a staging area for a lot of the project components. You were wondering what them walls are? That's the new Bowser requirement, so that we kind of initiated to Bowser to prevent seepage from wetlands into the drainage system. So what we're doing is we put those vinyl sheet piling walls between the ditch system and the wetland, to keep the wetland intact, but yet we don't have to mitigate the wetland, because we're not changing the lateral effect of the wetland will not change, or should not change. This is a diversion channel that we had to build around the church. This was another component. You can see where we planted new trees for the church over your left shoulder. We tore down some really big spruce trees that were kind of legendary. We'll take a right here, and you just kind of, you can keep driving. So we just we made a deal with the church to really do whatever. We didn't want God mad at us, so we figured we'd do whatever the church really needed to satisfy their loss of those large spruce trees. So we planted live trees there, 8-footers, 10-footers, and we had the Pennington SWCD plant some new trees. I'm going to have Tony just kind of talk about the emergency spillway, which we just passed, and then we'll talk about the outlet structure.
Okay, so we just went by. You can see back there a ways. there's a lowered area in the levee system, and that is really the secondary or auxiliary spillway for the levee system. It's 500 feet in length. You hope you don't have an event where that is operating. The ditch here along the edge is a bypass ditch for that spillway. About a 50-foot bottom width on it, 4-to-1 side slopes, and then there's a bench area in between it up to the levee system itself. Once we get up here to the outlet structure, the primary outlet structure is in the very southwest corner up here, up ahead. I believe we're going to stop the bus and get out for those folks that want to get out and take a peek at that structure. And I can chat a little bit more about that structure once we get up there.
You can test it now. If someone falls out, we'll fix it. We'll have to fix it.
For the impoundment, there's a 60-inch pipe that's inlets down here. There's an outlet on this side with the riprap down here. There's a gate that controls that. We can open and close that as much as we want within that 60 inches of operation. In a spring situation, that gate would be closed. In theory, the water would fill out here. If it got high enough, this is sized down here on the side, on the bottom of those trash racks, that a 100-year summer event will be able to hold all that water without having any outflow from the site. So in theory, if we got something larger than that, a larger spring runoff event, this thing would start self-operating as it would get higher than that elevation and feed into the drop structure and then out the pipe. Other than that, you can see kind of the remnants of a borrow pit out front here. There's another one in the far northwest corner. I think there's four total that they kind of used. They started on another one. The soils there weren't quite as ideal, so they kind of patched that one up and quit using it. The reasoning for the borrow pit's kind of in the corners. They had the most dirt, obviously, on the west side here. The theory was then they could run this way, and then same down in that corner to kind of minimize their costs construction-wise to implement the project here. There was a lot of overburden that went back into this borrow pit here. We did have it in the contract to use what we have here. Down here is the outlet channel, which ends up into the Black River. To use that material back here for the levee itself. During construction, the contractor found it so good, this material was passing tests and moving so nicely that they ended up building this entire thing, like as Myron said, in about a month and a half. They had about 40 pieces of equipment out here. Scrapers, dozers, backhoes, off-road trucks, and they just thought it was more efficient for them to use this right here, build this really with no issues, and they dug that and actually hauled that into that borrow pit. So that was more of a means and methods for the contractor to do that. But
and as things move along, so they were clearing the trees around the church for the template of the diversion channel, and they were supposed to bury the trees on site, burn them. They said, how about if we just move them over here? So they loaded up the trees, hauled them over here, put them in this hole, then took this outlet channel dirt, covered up the trees, and unfortunately the Sorbigs have a shallower channel of water now, but you still have some deep ones over there. So you didn't get all what you wanted, because they did want deep water pits for not only, I understand they might have wanted to plant some fish, if possible, but they just wanted to utilize these for waterfowl. You're still going to be able to have some waterfowl, and you'll be actually better. It's shallower, right? All you waterfowl biologists, shallower water is better than deep water for fish or for waterfowl. So.
Byron, where will the blinds be?
That's up to them guys. So here's what I touched on the fact that the Sorvigs wanted to keep their land for hunting. We use taxpayer dollars. We feel that it should be open to public hunting. We live in a hunting community, hunting area. So all the land that the watershed district purchases from public dollars goes into hunting land. So we will be posting at the project expense. We'll be posting the perimeter of the Sorvig property. And I know posting only helps those who want to be honest, but at least we're going to take care of that for them so they don't have to worry about it. And then we'll open the rest of it up for public hunting.
So is any of the interior going to be farmed then?
So the landowner has the opportunity to farm whatever they can at their own risk. All right.
On the Sorvig one.
But
on the watershed land.
On the watershed land, we'll monitor it. We're in the process of trying to establish wetland banking credits on the property that the watershed district owns.
On the upper
area reaches of the area where you actually could farm on a more regular basis. But we are looking at a natural resource, and the board, there's a need for wetland banking credits. We are kind of in a pilot project with the Corps and Bowser on putting wetland banking sites inside of impoundments. Corps kind of lost the memo on that. They didn't realize that they asked us to partake in that pilot project, and they've been a little tougher to deal with as far as, we're almost to the point where I said, let's just farm it and be done with it, not even go through all the hoops. But we're still spending the money to at least do our due diligence. The board wants us to. So we're going to do our due diligence, see if we can get wetland banking credits. If we can't, then we'll just farm what we can and keep the rest in the grass. Because
but it doesn't sound like you're going to use the structure to hold a conservation pool.
No,
it'll be a dry impoundment.
What we did do, kind of for conservation pools, is we did, instead of an interior ditch as you would generally know it on an impoundment, we'd put the interior ditches, drain them through the borrow pits, and then so all the water has to go through a series of borrow pits, and we figured that was good for sediment reduction. And so it'll go through the series of the borrow pits before it gets here.
Correct. Yep. So, and that, the original design had the ditches coming straight, right, no bypassing the borrow pits. We kind of left it up to the contractor as far as where he wanted to kind of put those borrow pits out here on the site, so he could kind of economically figure it out on their own a little bit. But once we started seeing where they were going to be, how things were going to operate, that's when we kind of made that change during construction, just tie them all together. So.
Yeah, we know how sediment comes into these things once in a while. We figured that was the best sedimentation pools you could have is the ones right on site.
And during construction of this, our stormwater permit also required a sediment basin, which when we had a borrow pit right in front of the outlet structure, kind of worked pretty good for that as well. So it all kind of fit together.
And then you got 5-to-1 slopes on the inside for wave run up.
Yep. 5-to-1 interior and then 4-to-1 exterior, all the way around. Other than the benched out area here for where the principal riser is.
And we did have a little discussion before everyone got up here. So all these types of projects really are good for hay, for pasture, hay, not pasture, but hay. So what we do on all of our projects is we allow landowners to come into our office, discuss if they want to hay it, and if there gets to be too many people that want to hay, then we'll spread it out locally to the best of our ability to be fair to the general public here. So we will be haying whatever landowners want to hay on a yearly basis. That way we don't have to maintain it, and the landowners can utilize it. So again, the first option, obviously, for any of this Sorvig property will be if the Sorvigs want to hay it for any reason, because we have the easement to flood the place and to maintain the dike. But on the other hand, we would give them the first chance at Hayne this their property if they want. This is the Sorvig property here, 300 and some acres. So,
Myron, give us a sense of the size of this. Are we? Is the church there, the far corner?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just go straight along the road.
Yep.
Way over there somewhere?
There's about 3.1 mile of actual levee here that's kind of in a U shape.
Okay.
Tying into the natural ground then on the east. On the
I
east
think
end.
that's on like one section square, right? Is that kind of how it
It's
is?
just over.
it's over. Yep.
Okay.
Just over a section.
All right.
Yeah, I think we purchased purchased easements or right fee title to 714 acres. And that's this, not the easements for the ditches. That was just for this template.
Okay. All right.
In the outlet structure, there's a few items yet the contractors got to do. There's a punch list yet. I don't know if you can notice, but the trash rack.
Doesn't line up.
There's some issues there with the trash racks, and there's a few other items that we have still on our punch list to have them finish up. But for the most part, the actual levee portion is pretty much complete. The district is still tossing around the idea of potentially graveling a path to get to this location for operation. We're still kind of throwing that around yet on exactly the details of that. But
Any questions?
You talked about how there's a water management district was formed to pay for O&M. What are the typical annual O&M activities out here?
So, just to be clear, the Water Management District pays for the maintenance on the 3 diversion channels.
Okay.
The Watershed District's capital funds will pay for the maintenance of the impoundment.
Okay.
So we just happen to get some of our bills where there's very little cost up front to maintain these structures. Most of it's mowing,
Yep.
weed management, debris move. Well, we don't have much debris because there's not much forest area in here. There might be some crop residue at the at the structures that we might have to maintain. But I would say I just got some of the bills from the other impoundments that we mowed recently. 5,000 would be max.
Okay. And that's mowing the embankments?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And what like I said, where you can save a lot of money, I was just letting landowners use it, and it's free.
Yep.
So
How about the structure itself? When do you have to come back and, inspect it and stuff like that? 10 years out, 20 years
so
out?
DNR has a dam safety timeline that they come out and inspect or ask us to.
Okay.
So we'd have an engineering firm, and we'd
Yep.
pretty much pick the one who built it or designed it
Uh-huh.
to come out and inspect it, and then we'd put it in the dam safety. For those, any of these types of projects, for those of you from North Dakota or whatever, we need dam safety permits from DNR when we do these types of projects. And there's a checklist every year or every so many years what they require for their dam safety inspections. So that we comply, and they got a great guy over there in St. Paul that really keeps us on our toes.
Jason?
Yep, Jason Boyle. Boyle, yep. Really good employee there, and he does a really nice job with that. And he comes out way up in front and lets us know that it's time, and do you want us to do it? Do you guys want to do it? It's typically more efficient if we do it. We're already here. We're here anyway, a couple, various times a year, so we usually will do our dam safety report and send it.
And where was that emergency?
it's back towards the church there. Right as we were coming this
it.
way, it was kind of.
Okay, yeah.
There's some of it's in a fill, and some of it was excavated.
Okay. And
I'd say it's about half and half.
how's the overflow elevation compared to what's right here? What's the benchmark at this end?
I really tested my memory. I think it's
68, and this is the entrance to the Sorvig deer hunting camp, so we have to make sure we give them a nice crossing. And this is just the outlet that we armored and rip-wrapped as it drains into the Black River. All right. It really started in about 2002, where there was a Project 60 project team set up to look at the Grand Marais subwatershed. Part of the project team was to reduce flows into Grand Marais, as well as water quality projects. And a real big component was a restoration of a 6.5 mile Grand Marais Creek that was abandoned in 1905. So the project team looked at the whole 300 square mile watershed, which was the Grand Marais watershed, and come up with a whole bunch of components that really they wanted to see completed. The first thing we did was we agreed to on the project team was to first store water. Get some impoundments to store. It's 42 square miles of water. So we built 2 cells. One called the Brandt Impoundment, we call it, and one is the Euclid East, because it's east of Euclid. It was easy to remember. The Brandt Impoundment, which is the first one we're going to be coming to, stores 26 square miles of water from basically this watershed up on the other side of the ridge, as well, and then the Euclid East stores upwards of 17 square miles from a different sub-watershed. So they were completed. They were supposed to be completed in 2007. We started the project in 2006. The same contractor that did the Brandt Impoundment got this project. They built both impoundments in 2006. They had one rain day all summer in 2006. So they got the Brandt Impoundment completed, and the Euclid East Impoundment substantially completed in 2006, and then they did the punch list and the punch items in 2007. So that was really a kind of a phase 1 of the Project 60 Grand Marais watershed. Then we decided to move on to, we also wanted to do some channel restoration, because there was no conductivity between the Beach Ridge and the Red River to the north. So part of that was to, at a minimum, get a legal drainage system in place with grass buffers, so that we could tie the two the impoundments with the Red River to the Red River to the north. In the meantime, some funding came about from the state of Minnesota and federal, I believe it was. It was called CREP, Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. We had a landowner directly downstream of the Brandt Impoundment that the natural drainage system was straightened for over a half a mile, or about a half a mile. The landowner that was farming, or the renter that was farming it, found it to be very hard to farm that area, simply because the water wanted to go back to the old channel, even though it was filled in. It just wanted to seep into the old channel, and it kept the field wet along the channel. So you really had to farm it in 2 different crops, basically. So we talked to the landowner, and she was in favor of signing up for CREP and restoring the channel to its natural location. So we completed that in 2007 as well, under a Bowser grant. 2 years later, we went a mile downstream, and I talked to a landowner about restoring over 1 mile of straightened channel. At that time, we didn't have the money for it. Well, we applied for another Bowser grant, and we restored another 1 mile of straight channel and put the conductivity back into that channel and put setback levees for a floodplain. So now we got a grass corridor all the way from the impoundment 2 miles downstream to Highway 75. Then some landowners come and wanted to do a ditch project, a new legal drainage system that takes the water downstream of Brandt Impoundment and in the project in the impoundment drainage area, and so they wanted to petition for a new ditch system. So we completed that project in about 2015, I believe it was. At the same time, in 2015, we went to the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council to get funding for the Grand Marais Creek Outlet Restoration Project. We went in there with the project, and they noticed that there was clean water components in that project, so they sent us home, said you got to go to the Clean Water Council for funding for that part of the project. So we separated the project, put one project into flood damage reduction and habitat, and the other project into clean water. We ultimately got funding from the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council and the flood hazard mitigation funding for the DNR, as well as the Red River Watershed Management Board. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We had 12 funding partners that helped restore that 6.5 mile Grand Marais restoration project. The Army Corps of Engineers did a feasibility study on that project that put the price tag at about $11.5 million. We got the project done for over $6.5 million. And it was a really easy project to permit, really, because we had a lot of NRE, natural resource enhancement components into that project. The Corps had already done a feasibility study. The only problem is they never finished it because they ran out of money. And I didn't realize that they couldn't use their own study because it never got approved at the upper level. So we were using their manual, so to speak, on how to restore that channel, but it wasn't even approved by them, so they couldn't really say, yeah, this is good. So they still had to run it up their ladder to approve our permitting for that project, even though we were using their study that they did. So, but at any rate, we got our permits and we restored that 6.5 mile project as well. So we really completed everything that we sought out to do in 2002, and it was all completed in 2015. So it took 13 years, but it all got done. I want to say that I'm trying to do the price tag in my brain, but I would say it's 12, probably about $14 million over 15 years that got put into that watershed for improved drainage for landowners, at the same time storing it to prevent flood damages, as well as restoring habitat to 6.5 miles of channel, and various water quality components in that project as well. So the first project we'll be coming up on is the Brandt Impoundment. And you'll also see, we're just going to stop. You're not going to get out. We'll just look at the impoundment. We'll be driving along the north side of the impoundment. We'll take a left, go to the outlet structure, and or not the outlet structure, but the outlet channel, and then we'll stop there. And you can just look both ways at the impoundment and the restored channel that we did in 2005 to restore that half mile. So the Brandt Impoundment really encompasses about 460 acres. It was owned by, in part, one farmer, one landowner. He was pretty instrumental in getting this project done. He was really good to cooperate with the project. And he farms parts of the inside of the impoundment as well, mostly the easterly portion. We're coming right up to the northeast corner of the impoundment. We'll be taking a right at this intersection. Ahead is the Inlet Channel that comes into the impoundment. When we went out and looked at this project on the project work team, at the time that the guy who had Andrew's job was Dan Thule. When we started walking the channel, he goes, it looks like the DNR missed the protected waters, but it wasn't listed as a protected water, therefore it didn't fall under the category for permitting. So lo and behold, there's Ron Salentine right there, the owner of this property. So this is the impoundment, starts pretty much at zero elevation. As we continue in a westerly direction for the full mile, I think the impoundment height is about 16 feet above natural ground. So that's pretty much what the fall is that you have in this normal landscape, and that's really what you want for an impoundment, is to have a natural drop of a minimum of 10 feet. 15 is wonderful, but at a minimum you wanted a 10-foot drop per mile. The outlet structure is pretty much in the middle of the north-south levee on the west side. We won't be going to that structure. We're just going to go to the intersection up here and take a left. And then with that, we'll stop where the channel crosses, and then you'll be able to look at the outlet structure and the channel coming out of the impoundment, as well as the, like I mentioned before, the restored channel downstream. Again, this we talked about Hayne This impoundment's been hayed exclusively since it was constructed in 2006 or 6, yeah, or 7. I can't remember when I said 6. I think it was 6, yeah. Anyway, pretty much after that many years, you lose your hay production. So now I think we've reverted now to where we have to mow it. It's lost its value for haying. It doesn't grow, as high as what you'd like if you're going to waste your time haying it. So at this point, we mowed it this year for, I think, the first time. There might have been some hay. I'm not going to say there wasn't hayed, all of it, but I think some might have been hay. So we're across up here. You'll see where these trees are. Right up where these willows are. When I said exclusively, this is the channel coming in from the impoundment, and then you can look at the restored channel downstream and the setback levees on each side. I was asked if we had another landowner, since we do have a separation here between the road and the dike. So the watershed district had to buy the land. It's a real small strip of land where the west levee is. The watershed district bought that from the same owner that owns this land. It's been since sold, but so we bought a small strip of land from another landowner, but for the most part it was one landowner that owned it. So yeah, this was all in a CREP easement. That's perpetual. And we just got word from the West Polk SWCD that there was some, or might have been NRCS. I don't remember who. Torkelson. Anyway, there's some weeds out here, so we got to go look at them. I got him. She told the landowner last fall, but the landowner forgot to relay it to us. Because we do manage this with the land, so, but we don't, and sometimes the folks don't know who's managed it, so you got to send that to the owner. So then I told the landowner to go ahead and tell her to send us the information, and we'll go identify the areas where there's weeds and handle that at that time. So we just found out about last week, actually, so we'll be working on that to make sure that there's weed management that's consistent with the CREP program. So. All right, Euclid East, and we're going to go this full mile. We'll turn on a highway to the right, and the impoundment will be pretty much right there. Just a little discussion. You see those 3 towers ahead? That's the other. We had to miss those 3 towers too when we built the impoundment. We didn't want them inside the impoundment, so we went around them. So we lost a little bit of storage, but saved a lot of money. So. Little story about Euclid East Impoundment. When we come out to mitigate the wetlands on this project, my board member from Beltrami County was a Bowser employee at the time, and he hated the wetland mitigation site that we picked. Am I correct, Brian? I don't know, is hate a strong word? Brian Dwight? He did not like that wetland mitigation site that was picked, and I think have you changed your mind after looking at it? It's got a lot of nice shorebirds over there, but at any rate, we mitigated it on the downstream side, which is really not normal. Usually you want your mitigation site at a higher elevation that doesn't flood as frequently, but we did get the blessing to mitigate those wetlands on some of those areas near the outlet. That seemed to work rather well. So the Euclid East Impoundment is straight ahead of us. We're going to take a right. As I mentioned, we had to skirt around these towers, and the watershed district owns probably half of the land, or 160 acres of this project. The watershed district purchased fee title, and the rest of it's in private ownership. So once again, we do have open public hunting in parts of the impoundment that the district owns, and the rest is private.
You want me to stop? Yeah, you can. Black River mitigation was on one of these too, right? Wetland?
No.
Did you buy credits from one of these, or was that?
Louisville, pardon.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, we don't have any wetland credits in this one. It's
Okay.
just, so as you can see, they do get a little bit of growth in these impoundments. There's a discussion, and there has been for a few years, that we should go ahead and get some of the vegetation out of here before it gets to be forested. But you can see how the vegetation will grow in these impoundments. So now you are wondering what this big old thing is on the top here. We got approached by and I don't know the name of the bird tour group that comes into northern Minnesota and into Canada, but they wanted to put these impoundments on their bird watching inventory. So we went ahead, the watershed district, along with the Middle Snake Tamarack Rivers watershed district, decided to actually join in ranks with them to put these impoundments on a touring list of bird watchers throughout Minnesota and in the United States, I guess, because I guess they travel from all over the place to go look at birds. I'm not sure why, but they do. But yeah, so all of our impoundments are on the list, and we decided to put this structure out there too as a kiosk for these types of things. I had to say that because Lisa's a bird watcher. Oh.
But I did want to see.
Oh, you did want you didn't want to stop there, right?
I had a virtual
We phoned it. Okay.
That's fine.
Oh, I thought I messed up because I thought she wanted to stop there, but I wasn't. I didn't know she wanted to stop there. So now comes the Euclid East after 2006 when it was constructed, or 5. My memory's getting bad. This outlet channel that you see that goes all the way to Euclid was a channel that we excavated, kept the sinuosity of the channel, and as long as we didn't lower the culvert through the township road, the Corps did not take jurisdiction of this project, which was huge. So now what we're going to do, the board and local landowners downstream of Euclid East Impoundment wanted the watershed district to investigate the outlets channel again, and so we're going to clean out this channel for the first time since 2005, and we're going to do some retrofitting along the County Ditch 66 corridor, which is the outlet to this impoundment, is County Ditch 66. So at no cost to the legal drainage system, the watershed district is going to work with the landowners to make sure that the channel can function, so that it can so we can release the impoundment in an orderly fashion. So we went downstream 2 miles from Highway 75 here, and we've got a plan in place that we'll do this fall to make sure that we can release water without causing adverse effects. In the spring, we can do it rather easily, but when we had summer events like in 2019, September 20th, when impoundments filled up completely, they were almost going over the emergency spillways, and we had to release water. And with that, there was some farm damage or crop damage, but you have to understand we got 6.5 inches of rain in 24 hours. So without the impoundment, they would have lost all their crops. With the impoundment, they only had to lose some of the crops adjacent to where the channel was that we were using for outletting. As you went farther down into the valley, Gene, was there probably 100% crop loss downstream in the valley after it got off the ridge here in 2019? So whatever crops were left in the field in 2019 after September 20th never got harvested. And that pretty much wraps up my discussion.
Thanks, Byron.